Hello and welcome. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Bringing the World to Prince George's County. I'm County Council Chairman Mel Franklin, your host. Together, we are taking big steps on purpose to transform Prince George's County into a destination for the world. My guest for this edition of Bringing the World to Prince George's County joins me to discuss domestic violence, what we're doing about it in Prince George's County. Bringing the World to Prince George's County comes your way in just a moment.
We all share a common journey. We wanted to serve our country and protect the things we love. We were ready to face any mission and help those in need. But for some of us, coming home was more of a challenge than we expected. In the service, we had each other's backs. But as veterans, it can sometimes feel like we're all alone.
At the Veterans Crisis Line, we understand what you're going through, and we can help. It's your call.
Welcome to Bringing the World to Prince George's County, a production of the Prince George's County Council. The world is coming, and Prince George's County is ready. Whether it's National Harbor expansion, new businesses and communities, development around our transit stations, new federal and state tenants, a new regional medical center, new entertainment venues, or a true downtown, we are becoming an innovative leader in a 21st century economy. This is Bringing the World to Prince George's County with your host, Council Chairman Mel Franklin.
Hi, and thank you for tuning in to this edition of Bringing the World to Prince George's County. This program is a production of the Prince George's County Council. I'm your host, Council Chairman Mel Franklin. Bringing the World to Prince George's County focuses on our economic development success and the great work we are doing together to move Prince George's County forward. The world is coming to our county, and we will be ready. Nonprofit organizations such as Still I Rise, the topic of today's discussion, provide critical services to clients and residents of our county and our communities. They also have a substantial impact on our local economy, providing jobs and contributing much in the same way as small businesses. My guest for this edition of Bringing the World to Prince George's County is Dr. Glenda F. Hodges, founder and CEO of Still I Rise, a community-based empowerment organization for survivors of domestic violence. And Still I Rise also offers comprehensive support and services and training. Thank you so much, Glenda, for joining us for this important topic regarding domestic violence. Why don't we begin by talking about Still I Rise and some of the services it provides and the kind of organization it is.
All right. Thank you for having me, first of all, Mr. Franklin. May I call you Mel?
You can call me Mel.
All right. Thank you.
We're friends. You can call me Mel.
Let me relax. Okay. Thank you for having me, Mel. Still I Rise was founded, actually, we received nonprofit status in 2006. However, I started the organization back in 2001. I'm personally connected with domestic violence. You've heard me say this before. My sister is a survivor. In 2000, her husband attempted to take her life in the presence of her then 5-year-old son and 3-year-old daughter. But I'm grateful that she's turned her life around and she survived that. So it really kind of motivated me to start looking at what in the world happens when a woman is placed in that kind of situation and is actually controlled by another person. So hence the development of Still I Rise. It didn't really happen just that easily. First of all, I did a lot of research on domestic violence and started looking at different states and what other states and counties and jurisdictions were doing. And then I went around the community, starting in the Clinton community, Coffee Club, the CAC, the whole community area, whomever would listen to me, and just talked about domestic violence, just kind of through breakfast things. I did a lot of breakfast meetings. You were at some of them. Right. So after that, I said, if this is going to really be a formidable organization, I need to galvanize support. Let's set it up the way it should be. And so I did a 501c3, and we got our status in 2006. Right. So in 2006, we officially became a nonprofit. So Still I Rise is defined by the feds as a community-based empowerment organization for survivors of domestic violence. And we've since added sexual assault and human trafficking because a lot of our women are victims of not only domestic violence, but they're also victims of sexual assault. And now we found that some of them are victims of human trafficking. So they all three come together. But it's important that we understand what we're talking about when we say domestic violence. May I give you a definition?
Absolutely.
Okay. So domestic violence occurs when one's intimate partner seeks to control his or her thoughts and behavior, or they punish the person for their failure to comply. So I try to control you. If I can't control you, then I beat you up or do whatever. And it's not always hitting. It can be psychological, it can be emotional, it can be economic, but it's all about control. So when one seeks to control the behavior of another, usually in an intimate partner situation, we have domestic violence.
And is domestic violence something that could happen to anyone? Is it there, or is there a particular profile of what a domestic violence victim or survivor may look like?
No, not necessarily. Our victims come across all economic levels. We have persons who look just like me, people who are working professionals, a lot of members in churches and faith-based organizations. You'd be surprised. And a lot of the perpetrators are people who are in the faith-based organizations as well, like the trustees, the deacons, the stewards. Embarrassing to say, but it's true because we hear that kind of thing. And then when you listen to what some of the women are saying in the support groups, it's just hard to believe that we see these people in one aspect of their lives. When we go to church, we see them in one role, and then this sister that we know so well is leaving and going home with this whole different Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of personality, and she continues to suffer from repeated abuse.
And one of the issues that surrounds it surrounds a survivor or victim of domestic violence and prevents them from getting help is sort of this silence that we see in a lot of our institutions in the community and in the community at large. Can you talk a little bit about what drives that silence?
Well, I think it's the shame and it's the embarrassment. It's like Nelson Mandela said years ago about AIDS. He said the worst thing we could do is be silent. So the worst thing a victim of domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking can do is be silent. So why are they silent? Because they would rather you not know those personal details. They would cover up, they try to cover up the abuse for as long as they can. They protect the abuser. They don't know exactly how to handle it. They make excuses for the scars and the bruises. I fell down the steps, or I lost my footing, and this just happened to me. I walked into a door. We hear all kinds of things. Sometimes when women come into Still I Rise and I just happen to be passing through the area where they are, and I just look at them and I think to myself, what in the world could have happened in that relationship to cause it to go so wrong? This person that said that they loved you on one hand, and now you're coming in here for help because you actually, as one lady said, she said, I'm afraid to go to sleep. So she was very tired. She's working full-time job. As a matter of fact, this particular woman told me she was a GS-14 and she had this really impressive job and supervised a lot of people, but she was a victim of domestic violence.
Wow. And we talk a lot about victims, but in terms of the abusers, are there any potential warning signs for someone if you're, let's say you're particularly a young lady and you're encountering a young gentleman? Are there some warning signs for abusers of domestic violence?
Well, the research says that there are signs. The one big thing is the instances of control. So the guy that you're seeing takes your cell phone and looks through your recent calls and asks you, who is this and what was that call about? That's a form of control. And it starts off as simply as that, but then it becomes why were you on the phone so long? I called you 3 times and you didn't pick up. To whom were you speaking? What were you talking about? Who is this? And they look for signs, look for things in the environment with the person that would suggest that something is going on. So they read things into behavior that where there really isn't anything there. But the research says that domestic violence can be learned behavior. That is to say, if I grew up in a home where I saw my mom and my dad in this kind of relationship or situation a lot, then of course if I'm a male person, I'm going to think once I marry or get into an intimate relationship, that's the way to solve the problems. If I'm it's a cycle of abuse. You're absolutely right. If I'm a female person, I'm going to become passive and say that's what my mom did. My mom, first of all, said what happens in the house stays in the house, and then secondly, she did not resist the attempts at the aggressive behavior. She just left it alone. And so genetics, the research says it's learned behavior. The research also says that it could be a form of illness. Of course, it's cultural. It can be cultural, induced by certain cultural norms. There are all kinds of things that agitate the behavior, like excessive alcohol abuse or drug abuse, substance abuse, stress, heightened stress. Those are some of the things that we picked up from the research in terms of what brings this whole cycle of abuse on.
And what is the possibility for abusers to change? I know I know Still I Rise does a lot of work with abusers. What tell us about sort of that process. What does that look like for an abuser to change?
Well, I think change, first of all, has to be something that you internally desire. It's like trying to force behavior on a person. You can't do that. I think internally, when I want to do something and I say I want to do it, then I decide. I make a conscious choice inside to say I'm going to do it. People are always talking about losing weight, losing weight. That's just an example, a parallel. I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight. Well, but you continue to eat and do the same things that you've done in the past. You eat late. You eat the same kinds of things. But when you mentally decide that you want to do it, it doesn't have to be a Jenny Craig. It doesn't have to be a Metafast or OptiFast. You can decide you want to do it and change your own behavior, and then you, just like you did, and start to lose weight. So I think it's an internal thing. So when the abuser decides that there's something wrong here, I am acting out of character, this is not the way I should solve problems or be solving problems. When they decide that they want to do it, that's when they come to a place like Still I Rise, because we have a complete program for the batterer. It's our batterer intervention program, and we have an anger management program. Actually, we have a court-ordered anger management program. So we get a lot of clients now that are coming and saying that they have resolved it within themselves that they want to change, and so they are beginning our anger management or our batterer intervention series of classes, which is usually a 12-week program. But something just occurred to me, and I wanted to put this out here. We find that the level of abuse is particularly heightened in same-sex relationships. Same-sex yes. In same-sex, I mean,
so what's driving that
I can't really say. The research doesn't really say, but that's just what we're finding. I mean, I've gone to conference after conference where the same conclusion has been drawn by a lot of organizations like mine. But I don't know if anybody's really done the research to determine what that the motivating factor is for that. But on the same note, we find that the same-sex aggressors are much more likely to, one, recognize there's a problem, and two, seek intervention.
Wow. And we're going to go to break in a minute, but tell us a little bit about the sort of state of domestic violence in Prince George's County. Give us sort of a little overview, and then we'll go to break and come right back.
Well, it certainly is. It's bad, but it's not as bad as it has been. As you know, last year was particularly disturbing. We had a number of homicides in the county that were attributed to domestic violence. I think maybe 12 or 13, and then 4 or 5 of them were children, which is always heart-wrenching. But in Prince George's County, especially in District 9, I am happy to say that we are taking positive steps to mitigate and to eliminate this whole problem. And we can talk more about this this after the break, but that's kind of an entry into what I'd like to talk about.
And that's great, and we'll talk more about that when we come back. So please stay tuned for more of our very important conversation about domestic violence. Bringing the World to Prince George's County returns in just a moment.
I thought I'd start the video by showing you the apartment building where the fire was. When things like this happen, I think you find a new perspective on life. Red Cross put us in a hotel, so we were able to stay together. We're strong, and if we overcame that, or if we can overcome that, we can overcome anything. So.
Welcome back to Bringing the World to Prince George's County, a production of the Prince George's County Council. I'm Council Chairman Mel Franklin, your host. We are continuing our discussion about domestic violence in Prince George's County with founder and CEO of Still I Rise Incorporated, Dr. Glenda Hodges. Thank you again for being my guest on today's show. Before the break, we were going to delve a little bit more into some of the challenges that we're confronting in the county, and specifically in the southern end of the county in District 9. Why don't you talk a little bit about sort of the state of the problem right now, particularly in your focus area in District 9, and I know you also focus on District 7 and District 8.
Yeah, well, let me say that those numbers are readily in my mind because one of the grants that we have from Department of Justice Office of Violence Against Women requires a 6-month reporting, and so I just did December's report at the end of January. December's report covered from June to December, and it's due by the end of January, and I was pleased based on the numbers that I presented that since last year when I made my report to DOJ, there had been a 14% decline in the reported cases in District 9. Okay. Now, my focus specifically was on District 9, although the numbers that I reported sometimes are including District 7 and 8 because I have to report where the client comes from once I see them. When they come in and they provide their information, we don't necessarily need to know a whole lot, but we do need to know where you live so that I can report to you guys because you've been so generous in helping us get these women the kind of help that they need, and thank you for that. And the board thanks you. They're always talking about Council Chair Franklin. I was pleased that you were able to stop by when we had our board meeting recently. But the numbers are decreasing in District 9. I can say that generally. And I can say that we are now seeing, Mel, women from as far away as Bowie, that's District 6, which before...
Or 4, depending on where it is.
Yeah, well, these women are 6.
Okay.
Yeah, gotcha. And this is a reach for us because that hadn't been the case. So I'm anxious to report that we are expanding our reach, I believe, and women are saying to us that they came, because I asked one woman, I said, you live where? And she told me, I said, well, why? Just want to know, why did you come all the way over to Still I Rise? She said, I have a friend who has a similar situation, and she was singing the praises of Still I Rise. And so remember, we don't just provide crisis intervention counseling. We also have a lot of other supportive services. We have well women education classes. We have job readiness classes. We have money management classes. We have a food pantry for women who may need food. We have housing and legal referrals. We also have an emergency housing intervention assistance program. So if a woman comes and they say to us that they need help like right away, they're out in the street or they don't want to go back home, they want to take the kids out of the environment, thanks to Department of Family Services and Ms. Teresa Grant's team, we do have a small grant that will allow us to take them out of the home and put them in a hotel for a few nights until they are stabilized. Yeah, so that housing thing is really important. But just to plug, I do want you to know that we are still at a major deficit in Southern County with housing. We still don't have anywhere to house these women. Some of them stay because they don't have anywhere to go. So I can put them in a hotel for 2 or 3 nights, but I can't give them 2 or 3 weeks, which is what they sometimes want, because they don't want to interrupt the flow for the children. They still have to continue to go to work. So to answer your question, you asked me what's the state in terms of District 9. Our numbers are decreasing. We are making a difference, and we're reaching now beyond District 7, 8, and 9, and we're going all the way to District 6, and you say 4. But yeah, Bowie in this particular instance was where the woman reported that she was from.
And just for our viewers' benefit, District 9 in large part is, Clinton, Brandywine, Akakeek. When you start talking about District 8, that's more Fort Washington, Oxon Hill, and then District 7 is more Suitland, Hillcrest Heights, and whatnot. And then, of course, District 6 is more where you're talking about the center of the county, and it grabs Mitchellville, Bowie, and District 4 is a lot of Bowie and Greenbelt as well. So a lot, your reach is expanding.
It is.
And a lot of that's just driven by the need and the great work you're doing to start is getting out there.
Thank you.
And and we've built a very close partnership, not just my office but also the full county, in really working with Still I Rise to try to expand the services for survivors of domestic violence. But you touched on an issue that's vital, and that is the one of why people stay. And one of those challenges is the lack of emergency and transitional, or even more so, housing for survivors. Can you talk a little bit about why people stay in abusive situations?
Well, they are telling that the clients say to us that the children is the real reason. The children are, I should say, the real reason why they continue to take the abuse from the perpetrator. The child didn't ask for it. The children desired, should have an opportunity to be the best that they can be. So even if he continues to abuse me, so long as he doesn't touch the children. And the children aren't usually victims, but we are starting to see more teenage victims. And this is from the whole, the school environment, a lot of the bullying, some of it as a result of what they call intimate partners. But we're seeing more teenagers. We're seeing more clients that are coming in our millennial period, what we call our millennials between 16 and 30. That's becoming a bigger population, and I reported that as well in my last report. We have one of our clinicians who specializes in providing counseling to teenagers. So you didn't ask, but I wanted to say to you that we have 6 clinicians at Still I Rise. Now these are contractors. They are not employees of Still I Rise. These are contractors who have their own businesses, but they come to Still I Rise as we need them. So typically we have a person there every day. So there may be a Monday person and Tuesday and so forth and so on. And we're seeing as many, Mel, as 25, sometimes 20, 25 persons a day as it relates to crisis intervention counseling. And you didn't ask this either, but kind of wanted to let you know that as the services have started to expand, one of the things that we were finding was that our women weren't taking care of their bodies. So there's this whole lack of attention and focus on health and wellness. That's been a major piece. Just like they're dealing with being able to protect themselves and trying to stay intact, not being abused, they also are dealing with the failure to get their screenings and their preventive health and that kind of thing.
And I'm glad you touched on that. And one of the things that's great about you, Dr. Hodges, is you're a person of action. So, we on the county council, we talk to a lot of folks who have ideas, endless numbers of ideas, but rarely have a plan to make any of them happen. And you're an exception. You make these things happen, and you touched on this issue of women's wellness. But you haven't just talked about the issue of women's wellness. You've actually done something significant in Clinton about women's wellness. Why don't you tell our viewers about the great news that you've accomplished about women's wellness?
Oh, I'm so excited to talk about this. There was a bank that was located next to the firehouse in Clinton, 9023 Woodyard Road. It was started off as a suburban bank, I'm told, and then I'm told it became Essex or whatever. But it was a bank. When I moved to Clinton in '91, it was a bank. I think it was suburban at the time. But I kept looking at that building, and I kept listening to my victims and survivors talk about not getting their regular exams. They didn't do their MAMs. They weren't getting their PAPs. They weren't doing screenings. And I said, why? Well, I don't have access to clinicians or to providers, medical providers. And I thought, well, something needs to be done about that because there's a dearth of services as it relates to the whole medical attention. So I started looking at that building, Mel, and I think I told you about it. And I looked at it and I looked at the potential because what I saw, the structure was a bank, but what I saw was an outpatient wellness center. I saw something much bigger. That's right. Well, without a vision, people perish. So thank you, Pastor Washington.
Absolutely.
I saw this wellness center. So I then started to put the funding together to try to purchase the building, and I'm pleased to report that on April the 22nd, I purchased the building. I did buy the building. And then I talked to you about what I'd done, and I said that I'd like to transform this building, repurpose this building, and make it a women's wellness center. However, we need some renovation assistance. And I'm so happy that you caught hold of that same vision and talked to your colleagues, and you guys were so supportive and generous and gave us the funds that we needed to renovate the building. So we did do that, and on December the 6th, we had our ribbon cutting and dedication of what is now the new Women's Wellness Center, which is in Clinton, Maryland. Thank you. And I have yet to report that on January 19th. Well, Martin Luther King Day was January 18th or 19th? January 20th, because I think 19th was the Monday. We opened the doors for business for our first patient on January the 20th. And when we had the first patient, I think everybody in that corridor of Clinton knew we were screaming, yelling, and all of that. It was just crazy. But since we have been open, we've seen 56 patients. We accept all payers. We are working on credentialing with all of the major payers. That's been a process. We actually have at the Wellness Center 2 physicians, a primary care physician, and another physician whose specialty is obesity medicine. So, because we have a very active weight loss program. We do physicals for women and men in terms of the services at the center. We have 2 nurse practitioners and then a third one. We're bringing on a third person. We have a medical assistant with director of operations. We have the whole staff of complement of persons in order to take care of the women when they come in.
And just to be clear, this didn't exist.
It did not.
A year ago?
A year ago.
It didn't exist. This was, you had the vision to do this, and you put the plan in place to make it happen. That's rare. It's very rare, and so you should be very, very proud of that. I want to congratulate you on a real asset to the community that you've created in Clinton, and really for the whole region. I mean, I think the Women's Wellness Center is an opportunity for folks who haven't had access to the kind of care they need to find a place that's in close proximity. So I want to thank you for doing that. You know, you touched on women's wellness. How does that tell us a little bit about the connection between the women's wellness issue and the domestic violence issue?
Well, the research again says that when women are focused on staying alive, when they are focused on making sure that they are able to continue breathing, surviving the violence, one of the first things that they do is neglect their bodies physically, their personal bodies. So they don't get their regular exams that we need to have as women. I asked this one woman when she'd last been screened for cervical cancer PAP test. She hadn't had a PAP exam in 6 years. And she was under 40. So, of course, that was kind of scary to me. And I should say that in a former life, not too long ago, I was a hospital COO. So for 10 years, I ran a hospital. So I know and I understand medical practices and medical administration. So I know what we need to make this thing work. One thing about having a vision, is good to have a vision, but it's better to have a vision that you know something about, that you can execute it when it comes together. Expertise is very important. So, understanding that, I started looking at our population of women, our client population, and I said these are potential patients. And so that's kind of how we connected the whole thing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hodges. I want to thank you again for being my guest today. You are a true agent of change.
Thank you.
You should be proud. Thank you for appearing on this edition of Bringing the World to Prince George's County.
Thank you.
Thank you for your selfless work to save lives and empower the victims and survivors, actually, of domestic violence in Prince George's County. All right. And I also want to mention, Still I Rise contributes jobs and to our local economy. You are doing big things on purpose. Thank you so much for helping move this county forward. That's our program for this edition of Bringing the World to Prince George's County. Thanks to our viewers for tuning in. This program is a production of the Prince George's County Council. I'm Chairman Mel Franklin, your host, and I'm working to bring the world to Prince George's County.